As the rest of the world banks on reform and regulation, India is banking on accelerated growth. The country's second-largest lender, ICICI, believes India's banks could grow as much as 2.5 times their size in the next 5 years, as the nation's economic outlook brightens. Well, the chief executive of ICICI is Chanda Kochhar. I caught up with her earlier and began by asking her about the issue of regulation.
A lot has been spoken about the regulations and the stress tests and so on. We should finally see what is the final version of the regulations that comes out by the end of the year. But what I would say in general is that clearly there is a need to look at the definition of capital, to look at, broadly the leverage ratios at which banks should operate, some amount of liquidity reserves and so on. But at the same time, it's also important to balance that vis-a-vis the fact that you should leave banks with an ability to lend in the future. So what would be important is to see how we arrive at the right balance between the two. Not allow the same kind of risks to be taken as were done in the past, but at the same time not paralyze the system, because otherwise, without the banking sector, the real sector cannot grow.
If I speak to you in 5 years, how will your business portfolio actually change? How much of your revenue would you do overseas?
Even today we are actually doing about 25% of our business overseas. So for a bank like us, which is present in 20 countries, the overseas business is quite a large component of the total business. And we have to remember that actually the domestic business will grow at very robust rates. There I see huge growth opportunities as well. So I don't think the percentage will change. But one would just see growth on both the sides.
How much bigger? Doubling in size, possibly in the next 5 years, because of growth domestically and elsewhere?
Yeah, if I look at just the domestic piece itself, I'm actually quite confident that India, can very soon get to the double-digit growth rate. So, move from maybe a 9% growth rate in the GDP in the immediate future, and then get on to a 10%. And if that happens, the Indian banking sector can grow at least twice the GDP growth rate, which means 20% per annum for many years to come, which means banks like us can actually become 2.5 times our current size in 5 years.
I was also going to ask you about your funding requirements for this year and how exactly you plan to raise capital.
As far as capital is concerned, we are actually operating at 19% capital adequacy, so which makes us probably one of the best capitalized banks in the world. And within that, the pure Tier 1 core equity capital adequacy is 14%. So we are very well capitalized to take care of good growth momentum for the next few years. So we do not really need to add to our capital base anytime soon.
How concerned are you about the global economy in general? What is actually your biggest fear for this year? We talk about global imbalances. These haven't been addressed really. It seems that there's a spillover from the European crisis in the US then filtering through a lot of the emerging markets.
If you look at it in totality, I think there are various things. One is that I would think that in the US economy, one will have to find the new normal. One will have to get adjusted at certain rates of unemployment, at certain assumptions to say that excessive consumption will come down, and therefore, the rate of growth and the aspiration for rate of growth will have to get adjusted to a new normal compared to what used to be so when excessive consumption used to take place. But when you look at, the European continent, I think it's more to say what kind of fiscal discipline across countries will be followed so that we maintain the integrity of the Eurozone and therefore the Euro as such, and how do the currency and the countries move from here.
But volatility is here to stay, you believe, for the next couple of years?
Yes, I think the volatility is here to stay, and I think we should all kind of build that in our planning process.